Good morning. Hand today is going to be 6-3 offsuit. We are under the gun. We fold. Then we have a mid position player. Open raises 2.5 and big blind calls. We've got hands on both players. This player's playing 2010 for 261 hands. His mid position raise first in stat 16%, early positions 15%, cutoffs 14%. So we're probably, and then buttons 21%. So we're probably looking at, that 16, 17, well, I should say 15, 16, 17, 18% range. It's 7 out of 45. Going one hand above or lower is going to move that. So that's why it's about 15 to 18%. 15, this is 17.5%. This is probably a little too wide. We can kind of narrow it down, and I think the most likely ones to narrow down would be these gappers. I think everything else is probably looking pretty good. If we look at like limp first in stats too, he does limp, so you can kind of think about what hands would he limp with in this spot. I mean, there are hands that I think he could limp with, but I think this is probably pretty good. We can say, twos, threes, fours, maybe. We could add the 5, or we can take out the 5s. The 7-6 suited, maybe it's in there, maybe it's not. But we've got our good Broadway hands. Basically ace jack plus king jack, queen jack plus, and then like your ace 10 suited, king 10 suited, queen 10 suited. So I think this is pretty good raise first in stat. We do have some notes on him. Just a few. We have a 3-bet range of tens and aces. We've got called 2 bets from the blind, ace king, ace jack, called 3 bets out of position, 7s, and so forth. Ace 9, limp and called a raise. So I kind of think a limping raise might be some of the offsuit hands, maybe offsuit connectors as well, and possibly suited one gappers. Big line calls. We've played with this guy. We've got a lot of notes. We've done blind versus blind with him. What we're seeing is that really he's only raising with queens plus ace queen, and probably not doing that all the time either. But looking at call 2 bet from blinds range, I think we're looking at your suited aces. I think your suited kings, your suited queens, and then the suited one gappers and suited connectors I think are there, but I don't really see 2 gappers. And then for the offsuit, yeah, we have a king 6 off. And we have a king 3 off. We've seen that. Or actually, king 3 off was in the blind, a check behind. I think those are probably just exceptions to what his standard play is. So I'm looking at a range something like this with our suited aces, suited kings, suited queens, our pocket pairs, 2s to jacks, our broadways, rest of our Broadway hands. I think offsuit aces are probably in there. Probably these offsuit connectors. When we look at just percentages, big blind plays 36%. He calls 2 blind 37% of the time. And we've got 800 hands on him. So we're looking at, I think, a range that I think this probably represents the range fairly well. And again, it's just those fringe hands that I think we're going to be missing. So we had a raise, we had a call, and we see a flop of king 4-7 with 2 diamonds. King 8 diamonds, 4 diamonds, 7 spades. This guy has 0 donk frequency, so I expect him to check 100%. We also know that he's fairly passive. Seems like he's fairly passive anyways when he doesn't have the lead. So we do expect his check. It's going to be 100% of hands in his range. This guy bets, and he bets about half pot here. So his C-bet stat 63% when in position, 29% when out of position. Yeah, I wish we had more hands here, but it is what it is. So, this is a board where I would expect to see bet. I'd expect to see it. What kind of hands would do this, would make that bet? We're going to say at least top pair plus. We'll say the flush draw. All right, and when we just do that, that's 34.5%. So he has to have more. We could say backdoor flush draw. I think it probably makes more sense to say it's probably like the Broadway hands that he's betting for his backdoor flush draw. And that's still, it's only at 38%, which means I think he's doing some other hands here as well. So like the no made hands, I think ace queen, ace jacks are probably bets. Queen jacks are probably bets. For the most part, like any Broadway hand, I think is going to be a bet here. That's going to bring us up to 62%. Then, Queen jack 10 9 8, definitely possibilities that he would bet those instead of checking. Maybe the middle pair or the bottom pair. We've got turn draw aggressively. That's about it. I think if he bets and checks a turn, I think that kind of fits these pocket pairs. I'm going to only put these at 33% because they're a little unusual to see someone bet. And probably the same thing with the middle pair. On a board like this, I think we kind of see a lot of check behinds. I think these low pocket pairs are going to be checking and bottom pairs and so forth. So I think we're just going to go with this 68%. We have a small pot chance that we have those pocket pairs. So he bets villain 2 calls, which is the big blind calls. I thought he would be raising. I think we had hands where I thought he would be raising with draws. I guess not. But I kind of expect set to probably check raise sometime. We'll put this at like 2/3 for the set. I think a third of the time could be a check raise. Same thing with 2 pair. I think that's consistent with how people generally play. I think top pair calls. I think these pairs call. His fold to c-bet stats are actually pretty low, so he's probably calling with any pair and any draw. So we're looking at 48.4% at a minimum. If we look at the no made hand, I thought we had gut shots as well. 49%. It's possible that he could be calling with like aces. Yeah, we'll say any ace he's probably going to call too. That kind of fits like his fold to c-bet stat less than 40. All right, so we've got a range. We see a king. All right, so now that really reduces the number of top pair hands that we would see, any of the king x hands that we would see. Villain 2 checks, not surprising. Villain 4 checks behind. So we're going to leave his entire range that we made it. The entire range that was on the turn, we're going to leave that. This guy, though, I think a full house is going to be betting here. I think 3 of a kind's betting. I think an overpair probably starts to check. And all the rest of those pairs check. I think flush draw is going to check too, quite probably. We can scale this and say maybe this is 50%. 50% of the time he'd bet, 50% he'd check. If he's got a flush draw, I don't know if he really wants to bet it and get raised and then be drawing dead, or in his mind might be drawing dead. I think flush draw is going to be a pretty decent hand to balance against the 3 of a kind and the full house that he's going to likely be betting. So I think that's going to be it. So I do expect more checks here from some of these weaker hands. 2 of clubs gets there, so no flush draw. Villain 2 checks. So at this point, I kind of assumed full house would be betting here. 3 of a kind probably is just going to be a check, and all the rest of this stuff. So we've got a range right there, and then villain bets, and he bets somewhat small. Pot's 11. you know, that's maybe like 25% of the pot. And the question is, what would he continue betting with? Um, maybe he bets with the overpair for a little bit of value, and maybe he bets some of this pocket pair less than the top card, where he's thinking, okay, this guy didn't bet, so he probably doesn't have a king, so I'm going to go for a little bit of value. Could he have a bluff? Yeah, he could. I'm not sure what bluffs he would be doing that with, but we're gonna go kind of straightforward and say, you know, I don't think people bluff enough, so we're not even gonna worry about it. He bets. Villain 2 calls. I think Villain 2 would call. I'm trying to remember if this is the guy that we would call with any, like with a pair. And that's possibly, he could be calling with ace high plus, like 80%. If he doesn't, maybe he gets rid of the weak pairs and the middle pairs. Then really 3 of a kind, pocket pair less than the top card, and maybe ace high. But if he's going to call ace high, then I do think he's probably calling with these middle pairs. I think you go for value if you have a king. I don't mind if you go for a little bit of value with queens and jacks, because really you're ahead of any other pair that would be calling. So we see a showdown. He shows 7-6, so he does have one of these weaker pairs. So it's middle pair. We've got that, and then this guy shows queens, and that is just kind of where we had it. A little bit of value on both sides. So let's get some notes here. I did run GTO, so we can check that out. So we have a RFI 2.5 big blind in hijack with queen of diamonds, queen of hearts. He is in position, and 50%. Bet 50%. Check. Bet, we'll say 25%. King of diamonds, 7 of spades, 4 of diamonds. And then king of clubs, 2 of clubs. All right. Got that one. We will put that here. Call. This is hijacks 2.5 big blind RFI in big blind with 7-6 diamonds. Out of position. Check call 50%. Check call 25% on that board. All right, so just at a glance, I think he kind of missed a little bit of value. I think we're going to have to look at frequencies. You know, how often are we betting? You know, if we have a 65% bet here, we're probably going to back it off a bit on the turn. I think he probably backed off a little too much. I do think he's probably going to have to keep some decent cards in his range for balance. So queens might be like a mix, sometimes bet, sometimes check. Downside is that he has a queen of diamonds, which is going to help block some of the diamond draws. But I think, you know, with the diamond draw, you bet, yeah, of course he could have a king, but he could also, this guy could also have the diamond draw and would be paying. So you can get a little bit more value by betting it the turn again. I'm just not sure if queens, I feel like queens would be sometimes bet, sometimes check, just like the jacks. But we could go for a little bit of value. I think if you bet the flop in the turn, 7s and 4s, a 7 and a 4 should probably fold. But when you have the diamond, I think those are going to be pretty good calls. The call, I think, is okay. I think he could also, you know, raise 3-bet pre-flop. Of course, this would be like an unfortunate time to do it because you'd be against queens, but that's a possibility. So pre-flop, I'm going to say looks okay. Flop probably looks okay. I think the turn we've missed some value, and then believe it or not, I do like the bet on the river. Um, you might get a little bit of value. You're trying to get, I think you're trying to get value from the jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, also maybe the 7x and the 4x, where villain's thinking, well, the king came out, you probably don't have a king, so I'll call as a bluff catch. It is, I think, thin value. I'm not sure if GTO is going to say we should be betting all the time with this, or even most of the time, but I think it's a possibility. You just kind of have to think about the opponent that you're playing. If you think the villain's going to be calling with those under pairs or even with an ace high, just to keep you honest, then you go for a little bit of value. So let's check GTO. I already ran it. I did set up that we were going to be checking 100% of the time, so no donk betting because that's not what this player looks like he does. So we've got a C bet of about 83%. So that was a little low. It really looks like we're going to be C betting most of the time here. I think when we did this, we kind of ignored some of these lower pairs. If we do them, then yeah, I mean, part of our hand reading exercise is trying to read what the opponent is going to be doing, what the player is going to be doing. So GTO is actually recommending we should be C betting most of the time here, maybe almost all the time. We do have some checks. We can mix in checks with like queens, jacks, 10s. Doesn't look like we're really doing any checks with sets or over pairs. We might have some checks with a top pair hand. So we did have a bet. He bet, and then villain's going to be calling. Villain had 7-6 of diamonds. That was an appropriate call. I think, though, that GTO is recommending a raise, which is kind of interesting. Interesting way to play. I guess if you're going and if you know villain, this is favoring villain, he's going to be doing a whole lot of C bets. This is a great play then to check raise with that hand. You've got second pair, and you have the diamond draw. It's going to apply a lot of pressure. It's going to apply a lot of pressure to villain. Let's see if he raises. What hands should call? So queens should call. And then let's actually get our hand here. He calls, then I would expect once you check raise, you're probably going to be betting some of these better hands and then checking the rest. So here, I want to target the flush draws here because we have a 7-6 and I can see that 7-6 of diamonds is definitely a check. But what other flush draws? Well, we have a bet with like a full house. We have a bet with 3 of a kind, but we're checking some of our full houses. So like 4s and 7s, we're checking. We're going to need some balance with that. So some of our flush draws we're going to be checking, but then other ones we're still betting. So we're looking at, looks like most of our aces, ace 2, ace 3, looks like ace 5, ace 6, ace 7 are all going to be checks. Trying to come up with the reason why we have those as checks, but ace 2, ace 3 are bets, and just like queen 2, queen 3 are bets. Could be because we kind of block some of those inside straight draws, the open enders, like the 5, 6, and so forth. Could be why. But if he checks, the other guy bets, I do think 7-6 is going to be calling again. And full house, you're going to mix in these check raises. And some of those check raises will include your 7-6 of diamonds, 8-6 of diamonds. So flush draw with the gut shot or the open ender. So that's kind of how that villain should play, which is rather interesting. So we're going to have to kind of break this down a bit. So yeah, I think this check raise was an interesting play here. I'm not sure if I would have thought about it, or if I would have executed it. I would have thought about it. Definitely am not folding. So the better play here would be to check it, would be to raise that on the flop. So let's just focus on this guy now. So he bets, we get a call, and then we get the check like we expect. And now we're betting by 51%. So yeah, GTO has him betting the turn, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I think you need to continue betting. When that king comes, it's just so common to see people checking that spot. Almost gives their hand away. But if you had a king, I think you're still betting. And that's, you're using some of these hands just to kind of offset that a little bit. Not really a bluff. It's more of a thin value because we do have that diamond draw. If we take off the diamond draw, I don't think queens, jacks, and tens are necessarily going to be betting in this case. We have still some of our flush draw that we're betting. That's going to help balance full house and the three of a kind that we have, along with some of the pocket pair less in the top card. Get I guess we don't really have our open ender anymore. Where did that open ender come into play? Yeah, we bet that. Calls, checks. Oh, because we didn't have it, the 5-6. Yeah, okay, we didn't have the 5-6. I bet if we had it, 5-6 is probably sometimes bet, sometimes check. Definitely 5-6 of diamonds, I think, would have likely been a check raise. So he checks. I think that was a mistake at this point. And then villain. Yeah, once he checks the turn, villain here with the 7-6 had an opportunity to lead. And he had 7-6 here. So it's saying, hey, we should bet. I mean, at that point, once he checks, I think it's I think you really eliminate that king x hand. If he has king x, so be it. But I think you lead with the 7-6. You put the pressure on him. I think everything that you've done could still be a king x. You would have check called the king with a weaker kicker. You have all of those king suited or king x hands in your range. You check call the flop. You check to villain, kind of expecting him to bet again, and he doesn't. So then you attack. The amount that you bet, I think you're probably betting a little bit larger, probably a pot size bet. The question is, what's going to get him to fold? I think you're targeting with the bet hands like the queens, jacks, tens, probably aces too, like the overpair aces. You're never going to get king x to fold. You're never getting king x to fold. And that's why I think 7-6 is probably more of a bluff to get hands like that to fold. So if you bet, then you can see like queens, jacks, tens. Queens will likely he's got queens and tens should be raising, but I guess you're getting calls from weak pairs. So I guess GTO is using that as a little bit of value, kind of right on the cusp, because he wants some of the ace highs to call, some of the weak pairs to calls, and so forth. So that was pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. A lot of different ways at the hand. So yeah, we've got the ranges, but things to think about when we play. Definitely, the check raise sounds cool. We should be doing that. That looks that's a new play. I have to really implement more. I always look for ways to look for hands to check raise. I'm not sure if I would have caught this right away, especially not now. I haven't really played online a whole lot in the last few months. Been on summer break, so we'll be getting into this. But I'm always looking at opportunities to check raise to really help balance out the check calls, or really to help protect the checks that I have when you check to the pre-flop raiser. So I think we're going to end here. We looked at some of the GTO, and I know there's a lot more that we could look at GTO, but we've already gone over 20 minutes, so let's finish this up, get this posted. If you like this hand, you can look tomorrow for another.